The Window, written by Josh H. I was in my bedroom doing the typical at-home teenager thing, staying up late, digging around the depths of the internet, and generally not paying attention to anything other than what was on my monitor. It was the early morning, around 2 o'clock, and everyone in my house was asleep but me. The room was nice and warm despite it being the dead of winter since we had the windows replaced last week. We had been losing heat, especially in my bedroom, through some old storm windows, but the bitter cold was now kept outside. I don't remember what I was doing. I think in the terror that consumed me, I must have forgotten. I heard a noise at my window. Not the sound of a bug flying into it or the shrubs brushing against it. This was an odd noise, a thumping sound, something I had never heard before. I didn't think anything of it initially. Whether that was because I genuinely believed it was nothing or because I didn't want to find out what it was, I can't say, but I sat there for a moment and just listened to it. It was distinctly rhythmic. Thump, thump, thump. It only lasted 15 seconds or so and then stopped. I shuddered, but shrugged it off, and after spending an hour or two browsing and consciously not looking toward the window, turned my computer off and fell into an uneasy but uneventful sleep. This morning, after the sun had been up for a few hours and the things that go bump in the night were doing whatever they do during daylight hours, I walked to my window and spent a few minutes trying to replicate the sound that I had heard. I tapped the window, bumped it with some soft objects, even locked it and unlocked it, but I couldn't for the life of me figure out what had made that sound. Nothing I did was even close. I figured that everything had been a fluke and the day was normal until this evening. My dad arrived home from work at the usual time. He decided that the house was too stuffy, so he came into my room and went to open the window. We're in Texas, so winter evenings are sometimes very comfortable, as was the case today. Never in my life before that moment have I genuinely wished to be deaf. My dad forgot to unlock the window before trying to open it. When he pulled it up, it produced the same noise I heard last night. My window only has handles on the inside. The Absence of Conflict by Star Kindler. The teacher strode across the front of the room, looking out at her class. And so with the invention of Coordinates 5, true peace finally enveloped the world, she said with a sincere smile. For 100 years we have lived without conflict. The dream of world peace that so many strove for before us is ours. A young man in the front row frowned and raised a hand. Can you truly define peace as the absence of conflict? He asked. If people are not allowed to disagree, they are not at peace. They live in constant fear. She cocked her head, eyes narrowing. And so you disagree with me then? The young man nodded automatically. Yes, he said, and then his eyes widened. No, The veins in his throat seemed to bulge and twist as his hands grasped at his neck. He sputtered a few moments and then fell out on his desk. The teacher smiled gratefully at the class monitor as she removed the body from the chair. Version 5 is 10 times faster than version 4, leaving no time for argument, which is truly key, she continued. There was a meaty thump outside the door, but no one paid it any attention. The janitors would have everything cleaned up before the bell rang, and thus, peace reigned over the classroom. Denial, written by Dustin Davis. I waved goodbye to my friends as I stepped off the bus and headed to my house. I was super excited to go home and see my parents. They hadn't talked much yesterday. As a matter of fact, they just stayed in their bedroom all day. They haven't been feeling well. I ran up the stairs of the front porch and swung the front door open with a big cheesy grin on my face. However, when I opened the door, there was no one in the den. The television was off and the house seemed to be abnormally quiet. I took a step in and started calling out. Mom! Dad! I called. I knew they were supposed to be here. Dad had the day off and Mom didn't have any plans with her girlfriends until next week, right? I placed my backpack on the ground next to the couch and walked into the kitchen to check the calendar. October 5th. I was right. Dad took this day off so him, Mom, and I could go see a movie together. They've got to be around here somewhere, I thought to myself. And then it hit me. School let out early today because of the busted water pipe. I looked at my watch on my wrist. It's only 12 o'clock. They might still be sleeping. I headed back through the den and slowly opened their bedroom door. Surely enough, there they lie. A sigh of relief escaped my mouth and my grin returned. I tiptoed over to my mom's side of the bed and pulled the covers back. I was greeted with the same sight as the day before. She laid there motionless, eyes glazed over, her mouth agape. Her skin was a pale white, and her hair was beginning to thin. The soup I gave her yesterday sat on the bedside table. It was stale now, and she hadn't even touched it. I'm beginning to think they don't want to feel better. I placed the cover back over her head, grabbed the old soup, and left the room slowly, closing the door behind me. I decided not to wake up either of them, considering they must need their sleep. I'm sure they will be up for it tomorrow. Until then, I have a ton of psychology homework to be done. We're doing this paper on people who have some type of disorder causing them to live in denial of some of the most obvious things. I couldn't imagine living like that. A Trip to the Cemetery by Johnny V. On an early dim morning, an elderly woman rested her head atop a gravestone. Henry Blackwood, 1938 to 2004. She rested flowers on it and wept, something she didn't usually do. She always made sure to bring something of Henry's when she made her annual visit to its grave. Her memory wasn't what it used to be, and her brain needed help to get it jogged. She brought something he hated, his hearing aids. She remembered wistfully how he never used them, always insisting he had excellent hearing despite keeping the television's volume up so high. Now all she wanted was his return to her loving embrace. "Oh, Henry," she fell to her knees and looked to the sky. "How I wish you'd come back to me." Up in the sky and through her blurred, teary vision, she saw a red star. It was faint, but she heard a malignant chuckle and the star flashed to match it. Then it disappeared with the rising sun. She wiped away her tears. Strange. Was it a product of her imagination? She stood up and surveyed the area, but saw nothing. It seemed like the moment was merely nothing but old, senile, womanly mood swings. As she smiled at her silly old self, a question came to her that felt like part of a dark realization. Could the battery in the hearing aid still work? She attached it to her best ear and turned it on. She could hear the rustling of crow feathers in a nearby tree. It probably still worked due to her husband's lack of commitment to use it. Then, swallowing hard, she rested her ear on the ground above his grave. Her mouth dropped in horror as she heard scratching, shuffling, and a familiar voice bellowing a horrified scream. Eat Your Greens, written by Cosmofish. My mother always told me to eat my greens. Like most, I was a fussy and picky child, and I didn't want anything to do with the disgusting-looking mass of otherworldly slime that she slopped onto my plate every meal. Give me meat, give me dinner rolls, anything but that. Eat your greens so you grow up big and strong. If all you eat is meat and sweets, you'll turn into an aggressive thug, she always told me. Well, I certainly didn't want to be a thug. I was a nice person, you know. I was always polite to everyone and always patient too. I couldn't stand those jerks who played football and stuffed other kids in the locker. You'll just have to repay them with kindness and outlast them with patience, my mother always advised. Well, Mother, I guess you're right. I will be more kind and patient than all the thugs and jerks. See, I invited the jerk over for dinner. Wasn't that nice of me, Mother? I'll even eat all my greens this time to make doubly sure that I won't turn into a thug. I just wish it didn't take so damn long for the human body to turn green. I'm getting really hungry and my dessert will soon spoil, Mother.